Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast. It is a Thursday edition of the show where we will talk further about the Bucs playoff matchup. That's right, playoffs, the postseason. Their game against the Dallas Cowboys, where the Bucs are hosting on Monday night. Now, these two teams have played each other before, but it was a long time ago in week one, and a lot of things have changed since then. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about what we saw and heard from the Bucs facility over the last 2 days, and get into a lot of the injuries and conversation there as well. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my colleague from PewterReport.com, Adam Slavon. Adam, I think you only have a couple more days before you're going back to UT for the next semester at school.
Yep.
How you doing? And you ready for this playoff game?
I am. I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be on today. We have a lot to talk about regarding the Bucs, and as you mentioned, what we've seen the past 2 days in the open locker room, at the press conferences, and just overall, like talking about the Bucs matchup now versus week one.
Yeah, a whole lot of differences, and we can talk about a couple different things in other areas. But I think what a lot of the fans want to know right away, and the injury report will come out at some point during the show. It typically does. I also want to say what up to everybody in the chats. Les says, "Go Bucks." Common Sensei says, "Sup people." And Nathan, hello to you, Matt, and hello, Adam. So what's up, everybody? Tom in there with the Go Bucks. Harvinder getting right into it as well, saying hopefully Byron doesn't stick rigidly to a pre-prepared play script and they go after the Dallas weaknesses like their corners. The defense have to go after the Dallas O-line with injury. So Harvinder already bringing that insight 2 minutes into the show. But Adam, you and I were at practice today. We were at the facility yesterday as well, but yesterday was more just talking to assistant coaches and players as well. The good news at practice today, and like I said, we'll get the injury report in a little bit, was for the most part, almost entirely, the Bucs pretty much had a clean bill of health at practice today. So Donovan Smith was participating. Robert Hainsey was participating. Ryan Jensen, the one that everybody wants to talk about, Ryan Jensen was practicing as well. Carlton Davis was out there. That was a good sign because he's missed not just last week, but the past couple of weeks. We saw Russell Gage. We saw Julio Jones. Vita came out a little bit later. He had, I would call it like a wrap on his, I believe, his right calf. But Vita was out there. Is there anybody amazing?
No, I think you hit them all. Yeah, everyone was out there pretty much. It was a good sign.
Yeah, and that's obviously a huge sign moving forward because that's been kind of one of the big storylines at the moment is that the Bucs weren't totally 100% healthy for, a majority of the season, but especially as of late. So I'll ask you, Adam, out of all the players injured that looks like will be coming back this week, in your opinion, who provides the biggest boost, the biggest upgrade to Tampa Bay trying to defeat the Cowboys on Monday?
That's a great question. I feel like you could go a few different ways. In my opinion, I would say Carlton Davis would be the biggest return to practice that we've seen this week. Now, he had a great game. We talked about it on the Pewter Report podcast yesterday. He had a great game against Jamar Chase in the Bengals. He had 4 pass deflections, the interception, and getting him back against CeeDee Lamb. Now, CeeDee Lamb in week one, he had a really quiet game against the Bucs. He had 2 catches for 29 yards. Hopefully we see that on Monday night. A repeat performance of that because CeeDee Lamb, he's been electric the past few weeks. He's put up over 1,300 receiving yards this year. So having a shutdown corner like Davis and maybe mixing in some Dean as well, that'll be huge in stopping the Cowboys because they have a lot of playmakers on that side of the ball, not just CeeDee Lamb, but also Tony Pollard. Coach Todd Bowles spoke a lot and spoke very highly of Tony Pollard today.
Yes, he did, and I think you have a great answer picking Carlton Davis. This isn't like a draft. I could pick Carlton Davis as well, and I probably would. And I think it's really important, and Todd Bowles has asked about this today. You can check it out on our Twitter. But he was asked about how do you balance or how do you determine having a corner shadow essentially the other team's top wide receiver versus strictly playing one corner on the left side, one corner on the right. I think a great example historically for just football fans in general, Bucs fans would know this guy as well. But for example, both these guys for the Bucs separate times, but briefly, Darrelle Revis, who could go into the Hall of Fame, hopefully with Andre Barber this season.
Yeah,
Darrelle Revis was a corner that just shadowed everybody left and right. Did not matter if it didn't matter where the top wide receiver lined up. Darrelle Revis would cover that guy, and most of the time put him on Revis Island. Now, Richard Sherman, who Revis and Sherman were kind of like the top two corners in their heyday. Those were the guys that everyone, pretty much compared together. Richard Sherman predominantly played on one side of the field. I believe it was the right side of the field, if I'm not mistaken. His left, but if you're on offense, you're looking, he's on the right side.
Yeah.
And some people prefer that, to play on one side. They feel more comfortable because if you're shadowing all over the field, you're going, you're looking over your right shoulder, then you're looking over your left shoulder. It's a little bit different. At the end of the day, you still have to cover the wide receiver in front of you, but it's definitely slightly different than just knowing that you're going to be on side. So to see how the Bucs will go about that, and I think to anyone that watched our show yesterday, we had Rick Zoyce on, Football Insider, great friends with Scott Reynolds as well, but he grew up a Cowboys fan, watches them intently. And, Scott and Rick were both talking about that. It's one thing to just have a corner shadow the other team's top wide receiver. It's another when you have to factor in the other corner on the other side or bringing in another corner. Like if they line up in the slot, what do you do there? Do you just keep Jamel Dean on one side? Do you put Sean Murphy-Bunting in as well? Like, how do you go about that? So I think that's really important. My answer for most important, who could provide the most boost, I would say, and he returned 2 weeks ago, so it's not anything crazy out of the blue. But I think when it comes to playing against the Cowboys defensively, and I still do believe that if the Bucs are going to make a run at this, it's going to be defensive driven with some Tom Brady magic sprinkled in there. I think the combo of Vita Vea and Akeem Hicks, and we don't know exactly how healthy is Vita was able to play in the NFC clinching game against the Panthers, but I think having Vita Vea in there, let's remember, he led the Bucs in sacks this season, and the Bucs have been getting sacks all over the place because
44
I think
on the season.
Yeah, I believe they were in the top 10. They missed Shaq Barrett since the Thursday night game, and let's be honest, Shaq Barrett wasn't totally, lighting up the field when he was in the game. But Vita and Akeem Hicks together, stopping that run, I think is ultimately the most important thing for the Bucs defense. Because if Dallas gets going with that run game, whether it's Zeke, whether it's Tony Pollard, it doesn't really matter who's going to be covering CeeDee Lamb. It doesn't matter if they're going to get that pressure on Dak Prescott. It does matter a little bit, of course. But we've seen at times when teams run ragged on the Bucs, it's a terrible, terrible outcome for Tampa Bay. And then you look at other games. The 49ers game, absolutely. But then on the flip side, you look at the way that the Bucs were able to stop the Seahawks in Germany. And maybe they got a little assist from the field being a slip and slide out there. Mike Evans was very passionate about that yesterday, talking about it. Or you look at how they stopped the Panthers. Look at both Panthers games. Look how the Panthers were able to run over and over and over when the Bucs lost to them in Carolina, and the way that they were able to stop the run that final week of the season. To me, I really think if you stop the Cowboys' run, you have a great, much, much better chance of winning this game against Dallas.
That's a great point. And I was looking up Tony Pollard's statistics just to kind of demonstrate how efficient he's been, like in a 1-2 punch with Zeke, who's still dominant, still the same old Zeke that we know since he's entered the league. Tony Pollard has over 1,000 rushing yards on under 200 carries this season. By metrics, he ranks as the third most efficient running back by Pro Football Focus. He's an electric player. So to your point, having guys like Vita Vea and Akeem Hicks up the middle to kind of stop them from running, and especially with the Dallas offensive line, that they have two bookend tackles in both the Smiths. Smith playing on the right side now, Tyron Smith, who's had a really great career, Zach Martin. They're supposed to get their center back this week.
That's right.
So just stopping the run, yeah, it's a great point having Vea and Hicks back.
Yeah, thank you. So that's actually one of the big changes we can get into right now. We'll go back to the Bucs personnel and what changes the Bucs have really had. But one of them is the fact that their offensive tackle is moving over to right tackle because their other left tackle is able to start in this game. That was a big difference because the Bucs were able to get to Dak Prescott in the first one. If you remember, Vita Vea actually injured Dak Prescott in that game. It was later in the game because I saw some people, like more national pundits or talking heads, as they say, being like, well, Dak Prescott got injured in that game. Dak got injured late in the game when the score, I believe, if it wasn't already 19-3, it was definitely a one-possession game.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear, oh, Dak wasn't in the game. That's why the Bucs beat the Cowboys. That game was dominated defensively by the Buccaneers, and the Bucs were able to score with Mike Evans later in that game. So I don't really want to hear, that if Dak Prescott got a little bit more time. There you see Cooper Rush on that play. He got in later in that one. But having a healthier offensive line, I think, is one of the biggest factors for Dallas in this game. And you add on top of that the fact that Shaq Barrett won't be in this game. And I understand, as I mentioned before, that he kind of struggled the season before he got hurt. But you don't have your de facto best pass rusher in this game with Shaq Barrett. Now, they have Anthony Nelson, and Anthony Nelson has played great down the stretch. But if you ask Josh Capo of PewterReport.com, he will say that the stats aren't really telling everything. Josh Capo has said that the overall pressure rates, the percentage that Anthony Nelson has been getting, are kind of down, but he's been making the most when he does get to the quarterback because he is getting those sacks and he is, taking the football away. He leads the team in forced fumbles this season. So obviously they're going to need Anthony Nelson to step up. But how do you see that matchup playing out?
Yeah. Talking about Anthony Nelson, and we mentioned Vita Vea and Akeem Hicks as well. I think another guy that we need to really keep an eye on in this game is Devin White and the ability that he has in rushing the passer. In that game, in the Dallas game, Nelson and Vea had sacks, but Devin White had two. He matched Micah Parsons on the other side and getting 2 sacks that game. The way that the Bucs schemed Devin White up in that game was really good because they disguised him behind Levante David on like some blitz packages. So I definitely think that Devin White can have a huge impact on this game as well.
Yeah, I love that answer, Adam, especially because I feel like Devin, strictly as a guy getting after the quarterback, getting those sacks, he was way better at the beginning of the season. And I'm not saying that I don't think Devin's play has tailed off. He obviously went through the rough patch,
some ups and downs.
Yes, the Baltimore game. But Devin has been so much more controlled in the latter half of the season, but it's been better for the Bucs defense. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I love the high flying Devin White, and he brings a lot of good things in that game or to the defense in any game, really. But Devin flying around, getting sacks, but then later on missing this assignment, missing that assignment, letting the team get back in the game, that doesn't do anybody any favors. And Devin, to your point, I think was really successful, whether it's blitzing up the middle or the delayed blitz, when you let the play go out for a little bit and then he uses his advantage, his speed, to get after the quarterback after the blocking assignments have already gotten through. So I think that's really important to notice. Devin, I believe, was second on the team in sacks behind Vita Vea, so that's something really important to watch. We have a super chat from Les Evans, and if you super chat us, one, we really appreciate it, but two, you cut the line. We make sure we answer your question as soon as possible, or statement. It could just be a statement. And Les, again, thank you, Les, for the $10 super chat, says, Blaine and Devin Tompkins just missed on an end zone pass last week. Do you think Brady and Tompkins will connect for a touchdown against the Cowboys? It's a good question. I think Devin Tompkins will be utilized in the Bucs offense. Let's remember, last week, Tompkins started that game. He started for the Bucs. I think, they like using the end around with him. He's had some success in that. I believe he had a 17-yard run
Yeah.
against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, scoring a touchdown, I don't, in the red zone as well, I don't totally see that. You have to remember, Devin Tompkins is still, fifth, maybe sixth on the depth chart. You have, uh, again, I don't want to say the core four because they haven't really lived up to that hype, but you have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin, then it's going to be some type of iteration of Russell Gage and Julio Jones, however the Bucs decided. Doesn't really make a huge difference in terms of who's three and who's four. They're both going to be used. So that leaves Devin Tompkins at the earliest, Adam, at the earliest as the fifth wide receiver. Can I see him scoring a touchdown? I do, and it would essentially be in the Scotty Miller role, where
Yeah.
going to take a deep shot down the field, Devin Tompkins is open and makes the play. I think, just by watching, Devin Tompkins, as far as a wide receiver, and there's a very small sample size compared to Scotty Miller, even in this season. Scotty got some opportunities earlier this year. Devin Tompkins balled out. The stats don't really show it. He only had like 25 receiving yards, but they were a hard-fought 25 receiving yards. There were a lot of broken tackles, and then you add on the big rush that he had. So to answer the question, and Adam, I'd love to get your thoughts. I don't see them really scoring a touchdown unless it's a big, deep shot down the field, and it's not necessarily Tompkins' fault. It's just look at all the guys that are in front of him. They're going to get the majority of the playing time.
Yeah, I agree with your point. And it all depends on how creative the Bucs get on offense, as you mentioned, with like the end around plays, the deep shots. But even if, let's say, Diggs is matched up against Evans, Godwin's covered by Deron Bland, we can get into him. He's had a really good rookie season. Somebody the Bucs haven't faced yet. So if that presents an opportunity for a guy like Julio Jones, Russell Gage, or even Devin Tompkins, if they bring him in, get him towards like in the red zone, let him use his speed and just fly down the field and maybe score. So it's a great question. I really like Devin Tompkins and what he brings to the Bucs offense. Will we see it? Will we see a rookie step up in the playoffs? Maybe, but leave the door open for sure.
Every team that goes on a Super Bowl run needs that guy to be the standout player, the breakout player. We actually had a discussion about that on Monday's show, but I think the two people you really point to back when the Bucs won in 2020 on defense, it was Sean Murphy-Bunting, the interceptions in 3 out of the 4 games, and he had 3 games in a row with an interception. On offense, it was Leonard Fournette. He became the number one guy. Part of that was because Ronald Jones wasn't healthy for all of it, but Leonard Fournette was the breakout guy. Devin Tompkins, I think, would be a solid candidate. He wouldn't be my first overall pick, but I think you could make a case for him, and there could be that conversation. When it comes to energy drinks, my number one pick is always going to be Celsius Energy Drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. Celsius has a variety of flavors. You see some on the screen right there, the Arctic, tropical, and peach vibe. You can also go with the cucumber lime. Adam is a big fan of the cola flavor, if I'm not mistaken. Adam, you're also drinking a Celsius right now when we get back to the screen of you and I, if you could put that on the screen for us. But a variety of different flavors, 7 essential vitamins, and no sugar or preservatives. It's the healthy version of an energy drink. You don't get that post-energy drink crash later on after you complete your workout or whatever it is that you're doing that makes you want to have a Celsius energy drink. It's also a great substitute for coffee. You've heard Scott Reynolds talk about this. Scott has also mentioned that Blaine Gabbert has made this substitute as well. Great way to start the morning, obviously, with all the different flavors like you see on the screen there. You can also find out where to get a Celsius energy drink by going to the store locator on Celsius.com, punching in your address, and it will let you know where you can get a Celsius at your local Walmart, Target, bodega, a convenience store, and everywhere else. And then when you know you love Celsius and you want to buy it in bulk, I'd recommend getting the variety pack so you can try as many different flavors as possible. You can go over to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save, and they'll have it sent to your house or apartment whenever you want. If you want to do it weekly, monthly, once a quarter, whatever it is, just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. That's Celsius, hashtag live fit, hashtag Celsius energy. We love Celsius. And you are rocking. What are you drinking
cola.
there? You got the cola flavor. There you
Yep.
go. Right on cue. You got
Shout
the cola
out,
flavor.
The lemon lime one that just came out.
Yes.
That one's really good.
Just had a new one very recently. Very, very cool to see. They're always coming up with new flavors as well, which is really awesome to see. Now, Adam, you pointed out a great stat the other day, and you just mentioned him before. So I think this is important to talk about both sides for the Bucs and the Cowboys. Well, we'll start with the Cowboys and then get to the Bucs because we're a little more familiar with the Bucs than the Cowboys, I would say. But the rookies, obviously, when you play in week one, you don't totally know how those rookies are going to look at the end of the year. I mean, for example, Luke Gedeke started that game. Luke is not going to be starting this one, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So obviously, one of the rookies that have really stood out for the Dallas Cowboys is their cornerback, DaRon Bland. And he's a player, he leads Dallas in interceptions. You pointed that stat out the other day. Credit to you. And part of the reason that he's in there is because the Cowboys suffered other injuries to that position. But he's made the most of his opportunity when getting in there.
Yeah, for sure. So we didn't see him in the season opener, whether that was injury or just not playing. I would say it was not playing, as he was a 5th-round pick. But he's really stepped on the scene. His first career game came against the Washington Commanders in early October. He had an interception, and he's been a playmaker for him, much like Trayvon Diggs. That's something that the Bucs need to account for, is having 2 corners with great ball skills. And something the Bucs haven't really seen since the Seahawks game, it's Tariq Woolen having that playmaker on defense and just like the element that brings. And I would say on both sides of the ball, not just Bland, but for the Bucs having rookies, we mentioned Tompkins, Rashad White, Cade Otton. These are guys that didn't play much. Cade Otton had 3 tackles, but no catches in the season opener. I saw that was funny. Just like growing as the season goes along and having more of an impact, I think is crucial.
Oh, without question. And that is a hilarious stat that he had more, tackles than receptions in that game. And I think even, I'm not going to say more importantly, but I would say at this point, Rashad White is a little bit more instrumental to the Bucs offense than maybe Cade Otton is. I've called Cade Otton Mr. Second Half. He seems to get the job done in the most important moment. So that's obviously crucial to the team. But you know that they're going to try to set the tempo with Rashad White and Leonard Fournette. And Rashad White, again, first career game, first career rushing attempts. We didn't see the full-blown Rashad White until 2 or 3 months into the season. I think it was really that Germany game that kind of set Rashad White on his way for the guy that, he is now. And he just looks, it's so funny thinking about that Dallas game now, just the way that he ran, the way that he kind of like slowed down before making his next move or hitting the line of scrimmage. Now he's like shot out of a cannon when he gets that ball. He's able to make decisions. He's quick with the vision and just gets to the hole so much quicker. And obviously that comes with reps and game experience and finding your footing in the NFL. But I think that's important, especially for the Bucs, with attacking the Cowboys, who this is a guy that they didn't necessarily have to game plan for last time. And to your point about Cade Otton, maybe finally he gets going in the red zone. He's been that red zone target at times, the game-winning touchdown, the touchdown to set up the game-winning touchdown. Cade Otton, I'm not ready to anoint him as the official red zone tight end for the Bucs because I still think there's a lot of screws that need to be tightened in that area, really just in the passing game in the red zone in general, because when Russell Gage is your top red zone guy, I'm not trying to knock Russell Gage, but this is an area where when you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, why is Russell Gage your ultimate performer in the red zone? But I'm very excited to see Rashad White. I don't want to say Rashad White 2.0, but Rashad White's rematch against the Cowboys, which in a sense feels like his first game against the Cowboys because he was so underutilized in that game. And some would argue was still underutilized to this point in the season.
Yeah. And shout out Rashad White. It's his birthday today, right?
Yes. Happy birthday to Rashad White. He is, I don't know how many years old, but he's much younger. So happy birthday to Rashad White. Hope he's enjoying it. It was also Nick Leverett's birthday, I believe, yesterday or the day before. So happy belated birthday to Nick Leverett as well. He will be starting that game. Pushimi liked my comment. The touchdown that set up the game-winning touchdown. Hey, it's true. You had to score twice against the Saints, and he was able to do that. We got a comment from Big Sack. Appreciate that comment. Diggs plays too aggressive, pump fake, and make his ass pay. So, and Callie Bucks also says that Trevon Diggs. Did I say Stephon at first? That's his brother, who's a wide receiver for the Bills. Trevon Diggs, the second-year corner for the Cowboys. Callie Buck says that Diggs is overrated. So my initial thought, as Les puts up the birthday cake for Rashad White, my initial thought was that the Bucs are really going to be able to take advantage of, I would say, Mike Evans against Diggs, but it can kind of be either or, Godwin, Julio, whoever. But then after talking to Rick Zoyce, he said that Diggs is much, much more controlled this year, where he's still getting burnt from time to time, but he's not completely going all or nothing like he did last season. I think that's why his interception numbers have obviously come down. When you have 11, 12 interceptions like he did, teams are obviously going to make note of that and try to make sure that they stay away from him. So I don't look at the dip in his numbers as poor play. I just think of, hey, when you reach those heights and that limit, teams are going to game plan against you, and that's a compliment to him. So initially I thought the Bucs were really going to be able to take advantage of that, but then, after listening to Rick and just reading some other things, I don't know exactly how much the Bucs will be able to hit the deep ball, specifically just against Diggs. But Mike Evans always hopes for one-on-one coverage, and hopefully that's the case for Mike Evans.
Yeah, and you mentioned Diggs, his interception total going down this year. He only has 3 interceptions, but he sacrificed some of his interceptions last year for better coverage this year. He's become a better coverage corner. That was a big knock on him last season, was he was going for the ball, and if he didn't get the ball, he gave up the touchdown. So we probably won't see a lot of deep chances, as you point out. And even if they throw it deep, you have Trevon Diggs. I mean, his brother, Stephon Diggs, he's a pretty good receiver. And Trevon Diggs, he's made his mark as a cornerback with great ball skills. So I don't necessarily think it'll be Mike Evans. I see a lot more Chris Godwin. And I'd like to bring up Chris Godwin because we didn't really see him much in week 1. He played 31% of the offensive snaps. And in the second half of this season, Godwin's really come around and he's looked more dynamic, electric, and has been a bigger part of the game plan.
Yeah, he really has. I want to talk a little bit more about Chris Godwin in a second, but just for the viewers, this isn't really behind the scenes things, but typically when the Bucs play on Sunday, Wednesday and Thursday is when we get a lot of the interviews, press conferences with the coaches, Todd Bowles, Byron Leftwich, one of the co-defensive coordinators, depending on the week, and then Tom Brady. This week, with everything pushed back a day, today, Thursday, was kind of like the typical Wednesday, and tomorrow's Friday will be like the typical Thursday. But yesterday's event, I guess we should say, we got to speak to Byron Leftwich. We spoke to co-defensive coordinator Larry Foote, and then Mike Evans and Levante David as well, which was nice. Usually we get them in the locker room, but sometimes it's nice to have them at the podium. So Mike actually spoke about going up against the Cowboys defensive backs and what he's seen from them. He gave a lot of respect to them. And then in a separate video, which I'll play right after, Mike spoke about just the overall outlook of the Cowboys defense. So let's hear from fan favorite and team captain Mike Evans.
I mean, they're down at corner. They got 2 guys injured. There were some solid players. The backup is solid. We're watching more film on him. 26. He's made some plays, but when we're healthy, it doesn't matter who the DBs are. So hopefully we get a lot of cover 1. I love that. And Diggs is a really good corner as well. So he's matched me 2021 and first game of the season. He was on me a little bit, but not the whole game.
That Carolina game was.
Mike Evans loves his cover 1. He's asked for it multiple times, like this season, the year before. He's always asking for it. This is the other comment that Mike had to say about the Cowboys defense.
Well, they're a team that's simple. They're a good team, but they're simple. They don't run anything really exotic or defensively and offensively. They're just a really talented team, and they just want to play straight up and see if you can beat them. So we got to come with our best.
Mike is usually money with the Buccaneers, and if you have money and you want to spend it and manage it wisely, you should be using Muni Financial. Pewter Report trusts Muni Financial with our investments and retirement funds, and you should trust them too. When you're managing your family's wealth, go to Muni Financial because it's simply more than just allocating your assets. Call 1-800-868-6864 and talk to David or Mark. They're awesome people over there because they'll tell you about all the different kinds of services that they have. There's legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts, and much more. So once again, call 1-800-868-6864 and get started with the Muni Financial today. All right, we talked about Mike Evans. Adam, you brought up Chris Godwin. So now we are going to talk about Chris Godwin. And I think you could argue that the availability and the health of Chris Godwin could be the biggest difference for the Bucs going into this game. We all have to remember, that first game, it was Chris Godwin's return from the ACL injury. He, by no means, we didn't even know if he was going to play in the game. He was the original Ryan Jensen. Is he going to play? Is he going to be ready? We all really did not know. We even asked Chris Godwin, and he didn't know at the time if he was going to play. He ultimately was able to go. They threw the first pass to him. He took it for about 10, 15. It was for a first down, so it was at least 10 yards up the field. Unfortunately, he ended up getting injured, missed the rest of that game, missed a couple of games. Obviously, week 2, he wasn't around for that one. But then he was able to get healthy. And I don't even know if he's at 100% of his capabilities even to this point.
Yeah.
But he made 100 receptions and went over 1,000 yards and came close to tying and then breaking the Bucs' single-season reception record. Now, some of that manufactured touches. But in my opinion, I think Chris Godwin is the biggest difference between the matchups in week 1 and the matchups that we're going to see in the Super Wildcard round on Monday.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that point. And just seeing Godwin come along this season, I know he's spoken about it. Other players have spoken about it. It's been awesome to see him regain his form. Next season, I definitely see even a bigger breakout, which is hard to imagine. This is a guy that coming back from an ACL, he has over 100 catches. Guys usually don't do that. They usually have a slow season and before really coming back into form. But the Bucs have really trusted him a lot with a lot of screen passes up the middle, and he's responded really well. So it'll be definitely interesting to see him add another element, another layer to the Bucs offense in this game.
Yeah, I've said this before. Adrian Peterson has kind of ruined the ACL comebacks for players because what he did was incredible the year that he came back from an ACL injury. And it's presented this false reality that, you tore your ACL or another significant injury, bam, you could just get surgery and you'll be good to go next season. No
2,000 yards, right? That was the season right after.
Yeah, it was incredible. It really was insane. The thing is, there's a saying, it's not really a saying, but there's always the exception to the rule. And I think as we've learned throughout time, throughout players coming back from injury, is Adrian Peterson was the exception to the rule. But unfortunately, people forget that, fans forget that, and I understand. So the burden falls on said player coming back from injury, whether it was O.J. Howard a couple of seasons ago coming from a torn Achilles, to Chris Godwin this year. And Shaq Barrett, unfortunately, is going to have to deal with the same issue when he comes back from his torn Achilles injury. And so I think the expectations for Chris Godwin were probably too high to begin with, just because you think of what he's done before and what he can be. Callie Bucks with the commenting on Mike Evans' shirt, pennies to millions. Mike's really that guy.
I was going to make that point. That was a nice segue to a Muni Financial. Pennies to millions.
Yes,
that shirt.
I actually didn't even really think about that. But yeah, what he's been able to do, I think, has just been awesome. And to your point, I think he's even going to be better next year. I think he is I've always said, I'm curious what you think. I've said in seasons past for the Bucs, even going back to Jameis, but especially the 3 seasons that Tom Brady's been quarterback, Chris Godwin is the locomotive of the Bucs offense. You can hit him over the middle, you can hit him deep, you can hit him for a short pass, and he'll break tackles and go up the field. You get him on third down, you can get him whenever. He is the locomotive of the Bucs offense, because if you want to double Mike Evans, fine. Chris Godwin is going to annihilate you. You want to go one-on-one? Fine. Then Mike Evans is just going to completely dominate you. So the healthier that Chris Godwin gets, the more effective this whole team is going to be. And you know what? We've said that Tom Brady, maybe he's saving a little bit in the tank for the playoffs. Maybe that's the case with Chris Godwin as well.
Yeah, and I think a big reason why against the Panthers, the Bucs were able to put up 30 points. We mentioned Mike Evans having 3 touchdowns. He had a great game. Don't get me wrong. But Chris Godwin, he had over 100 yards in that game as well. So defenses have to account for not just Mike Evans, but Chris Godwin. And if you pay too much attention to one or the other, one of them is going to have a great game. And we saw that.
I think that's really going to be the case. Emily, thank you for the comment. Emily, always up in the chat, so appreciate you. Appreciate all of our fans. She says, hi, everyone. Season starts Monday. Let's wake the F up and play some damn football and start tossing that Lombardi trophy boat to boat. Yeah, that was an iconic moment. That was one of the most fun things to do with covering this team. It was truly a very awesome moment. There was another awesome moment, just kind of getting back to talking about the Bucs at the facility, both yesterday and today. I know a lot of the Pewter people who watch this show have been watching it for a long time, even before we even were on YouTube, when we were just a podcast. And obviously, people familiar with PewterReport.com know the late, great Pewter reporter Mark Cook, who not only was, he was a great friend, but he was, specifically to me, was an awesome mentor, loved by everybody. Whether you're a Bucs fan or in the Bucs media, Mark has meant so much to so many people, and he's sorely missed. He passed away right before the 2021 season. So his last game covering the Bucs and being in attendance seeing the Bucs was when they won the Super Bowl in 2020. I preface all of that because every year at the end of the season, the Bucs media, Tampa media, we vote on an award given to a Bucs player. It's called the Good Guy Award. And it's essentially a player that's been most accommodating for the media, that, talks after wins and losses, able to speak a lot or talk a lot to the media, and, provides pretty good answers. So every year we give a player the Good Guy Award. I know Cam Brate won one year. I think JPP won one year. So this season, we gave it to Tristan Wirfs, all-around nice guy. It was presented by Greg Allman, who is the Pro Football Writers Association president for the Tampa chapter. But the cool thing on top of that this year is that the Good Guy Award, and there's like a little plaque trophy that we give to the players. I know I'm kind of rambling on here, but I'm trying to give detail for everybody in context. The award, the name has been changed this year, and this was Greg Allman's idea, so really appreciate Greg coming up with this. And obviously everybody unanimously was great with this and signed on for it. It is now the Mark Cook Memorial Good Guy Award. So it has been changed to the Mark Cook Memorial Good Guy Award. It's a great way to honor Mark, a super special moment and very cool. So we have the video of Greg presenting the award to Tristan Wirfs and kind of talking about the background of the award and Mark's history covering the Bucs. So I just wanted to play this video real quick. I know a lot of us, including myself, love Mark Cook and miss him a lot. So I just wanted to play this video for everybody.
I'm going to take over this here. Guys, we're back in the locker room this year, and this is an awesome thing to be back doing player interviews in person. We do, the PFWA does a Good Guy Award every year for the player who's most gracious and accommodating in terms of interviews and all like that. It's always just been the Good Guy Award. This year, starting this year and moving forward, we're going to start calling this the Mark Cook Memorial Good Guy Award. Mark, obviously got here with Pewter Report. We lost him right before your rookie year. When you think about good guys, you think about Mark Cook. So I'm thrilled to be able to give this to you as the winner of this year's Good Guy Award. Thanks so much for being it's talking after wins, talking after losses, always just being you. We appreciate that. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Congrats, Tristan.
Thank you, Tristan.
Yeah, so just a fun little moment right there, a cool moment that I thought the Pewter people would enjoy, as Emily says. Mark Cook was definitely a distinguished gentleman, forever remembered. Appreciate you saying that, Emily. So that was a really cool moment. Adam, is there any other things that have changed for Tampa Bay specifically that you want to get into, or is there any other topic that you think is important to address for this upcoming game?
Yeah, so an interesting tidbit that I found when going over like week 1, looking through the box score, seeing which players stepped up for the Bucs. Leonard Fournette, he had an awesome game in week 1, his best game of the season. He had 21 carries, 127 yards, which is 6 yards per carry. Now he averaged 3.5 yards per carry on the season, and that total in the first game accounted for 19% of his rushing yards. The whole season came in that first game. So will we see Leonard Fournette be as explosive, as dynamic? We mentioned Rashad White earlier and just what he brings to the offense. It'll more than likely be like a split workload between the two. And so that was something that I pulled. A big change for the Bucs offense this year is not having the consistent running game week in and week out.
The Bucs have had arguably their worst running season in a long time. I mean, there's been times where it really hasn't been effective, but Tampa Bay went into this season planning on limiting the amount of times Tom Brady would have to throw the ball, and the best way to combat that would be with a proper running game. And it's so interesting, Adam, because whether it's Leonard Fournette, whether it's Rashad White, but Fournette's been here for a little while. This whole Bucs game in a higher regard, and it's just been flat out terrible. I mean, one of the worst in the league this season, and they're bad all over the place. They're bad on first down, and they run it way too much on first down. They can't convert on the 3rd and shorts and the 4th and shorts. And so it is quite the anomaly. We talked about Adrian Peterson ruining it for everybody else with his ACL injury. It was fool's gold seeing the Bucs run so well against Dallas and not be able to replicate it for the rest of the season. One of the positives is, again, Nick Leverett did not play in that game. And so even as well as the Bucs ran it against the Cowboys, maybe having Leverett in that game could help them run it a little bit more efficiently, because I think what Tampa Bay did really well in Week 18, which I understand they had a lot of backups in, they didn't play most of their guys, but they had some success actually legitimately running the ball to the outside with pitches, with sweeps, with end arounds. And I think that's a great thing that the Bucs did in Week 1. They really got creative. That's where we saw the first end around with Julio Jones, and when we didn't really see that coming. And I think it's important. We talked about Diggs a lot today. I think in that game, the Bucs went out of their way to target Trevon Diggs in the run game, forcing the corner to make a tackle. And if he's not going to make that tackle, Leonard Fournette's going to run over you. I know we've criticized Leonard a lot this year, but Leonard is great when he does get to the second level, and I understand that's not every single time. Leonard is a Mack truck going into defensive backs, corner safeties, all of those guys. So if they can try to take advantage of that role, and maybe the Week 18 game help them realize something, or could create a spark of, hey, we don't have to run it in between the tackles every single time. I like when the Bucs get out in space, not just with their skill players. I like when they swing a tackle or a guard. I thought Donovan Smith is actually pretty good when he gets out in space. Now, he's obviously dealing with the foot injury, and that could change a lot of things. But at some point, the Bucs have to stop being stubborn and get creative, whether it's more play action, whether it's running the ball differently. It's potentially the last game of the season. It's win or go home from here on out. You can't be like, okay, we're just going to execute better on this one. That's not
Yeah.
how it works. If the team stops what you want to do or what you're planning to do, you have to try option B and option C and go all the way down the alphabet or the numbers list, whatever it is. But Brady's going to need help at times with a solid running game. And I know it's been bad all season long, but that doesn't mean you just have to completely give up on him. You can give up on running on first down. I would be totally fine with that. They're going to need the run game at one point or another.
Yeah, and when watching, there's been positive signs in the second half of the season, at least on the first drive of the game, being creative with the game planning. And in the past 2 weeks against both the Panthers and the Falcons, the Bucs have done really good on offense. Now, the Falcons game was just the first half, but the Panthers game, just being able to scheme up different things on first down, play action passes, that opens the game up for, as you mentioned,
Yes.
Fournette, for Rashad White. And so the running game needs to be a key component of the offense, because in the first game, Brady only threw 27 passes. The rest of the season, he set an NFL record for most passing attempts in a season. So just to show you how anemic that the Bucs running offense has been.
Yeah, it hasn't really lived up to the hype, but bowling alleys that live up to the hype, of course, is Pin Chasers. If you haven't gone there yet, there's multiple locations, as you can see on the graphic: East Pasco, Zephyr Hills, Midtown, and Veterans. It's a great night out with friends and family. They have one pretty close to the Advent Health Training Center where the Bucs have their practices. The food is very underrated. They have deals every single night, whether it's all-you-can-eat pizza, all-you-can bowl, or dollar beer. So go to pinchasers.net and find out what the best deal is for you specifically and the party you're going with. Speaking of parties, if you want to book a birthday party for your kid, Pinchasers is a great spot to do so, because they obviously have the bowling, but they also have an arcade area as well. So the kids can do some bowling. They can play some video games too. They have a bar for the adults as well, and with a variety of different drinks and liquor and products like that. Brunch on the weekends obviously is an awesome deal. And if you want to book an outing for your office or whoever it may be, Pinchasers is a great spot for that as well. So again, go to pinchasers.net, see what deal they have in store for you, and have a grand old time. That's Pinchasers. Go to pinchasers.net. We have another super chat, which I'm going to get to right now. It was from Ant. Thank you, Ant. I imagine that's short for Anthony, but either way, thank you, Ant, for the $9.99 super chat. He says, I heard you guys talking yesterday about why Carlton Davis doesn't travel more. To me, it's because of Jamel Dean's ascension. He might be the best cornerback on this team. PFF loves him. What you guys think? I appreciate the question. I think it's an interesting one for sure, because I think the first half of the year, Jamel Dean really upped his play. He looked like a guy that's in a contract year and looking for that second contract. I think Jamel Dean was fantastic in that aspect. Then his play started to dip a little bit, but as we found out, he's missed some games with a toe injury, and I would imagine that had to have some type of effect on him. Now, in the past for the Bucs, they've kind of put if they're going against a real speedy receiver, like a Tyreek Hill, they'll put Jamel Dean on him, because Jamel Dean is the quicker corner of the two. Now, we have to remember, most Bucs fans, the first thing that pops into their head is the 2020 season when they won the Super Bowl, and they played the Chiefs twice, obviously. That first game, Tyreek Hill in the regular season absolutely torched the Buccaneers. But we have to remember, Jamel Dean did not play in that game. Then the second go-around, the Super Bowl, the Bucs played a lot more cover two, and they obviously did not shadow Carlton Davis. CD Lamb is a guy, I don't necessarily love the matchup for Carlton, but at the same time, you know, Jamar Chase is a fast receiver, and obviously I think he's smaller than CD Lamb. I don't know their heights, but just from the eye test, CD Lamb is much taller than him. So, yeah, for this game, and I do agree with you, and you can't argue with this. You can't argue with the success that the Bucs had against CeeDee Lamb the first time around. Adam, as you pointed out, 2 receptions for, what was it, 28 yards?
29 yards and 11 targets.
11 targets, and he only
11
caught the ball 2 times. So I don't think you can really argue with how they game planned for that. With that said, second go around, I don't think the Cowboys are just going to run the same type of plays and try to get them open the same type of way. You could see things switch around there. I think push come to shove, it depends specifically on the matchup. I think for this game, you're not going to see Carlton bracket CeeDee Lamb all over the field. But I do think, say the Bucs win and they end up playing the Eagles in the second round, I could see Carlton against A.J. Brown for the entirety of the game. I think it's very matchup specific, but I don't believe that Todd Bowles will shy away from doing shadow coverage if he feels that it is the best option for Tampa Bay.
Question for you. Who do you think is the better corner between the two? Do you think it's Davis or Dean? For me, that's really close. I think they're like a 1A, 1B. Like, again, it depends on the matchup, but they're both really solid corners.
Yeah, they really are. I would still go with Carlton. I think Carlton has a better track record of the one-on-one against the best opponents. And I don't know, I take a lot of stock in that. That weighs heavily for me specifically. But Jamel Dean, I think he's probably a better tackler than Carlton Davis.
Yeah, he's more physical.
Carlton's pretty physical, but I think Jamel gets the job done better, whether it's making the open field tackle or if they're playing zone and it's a 3-yard out route for the receiver. Jamel Dean gets a better push on the ball, and he's obviously faster. So I'm still going Carlton, but I agree with you. It's a very, very close, very, very close battle between the two of them.
Yeah, and the Bucs also need to account for T.Y. Hilton, who is a late season addition on the Cowboys roster, is like another receiver that they have to cover.
Yeah, Rick Zoyce was talking about him yesterday, and he's like, yeah, it's crazy to think, but he's only been on the team for 3 weeks, hasn't even played with them, but he's a really efficient route runner. And what Rick was saying, and again, I'd recommend to everybody to go back and watch yesterday's episode if you really want to go in depth about the Cowboys. They have CeeDee Lamb, and then after that, they have Noah Brown. They have receivers who are obviously talented. You have to be talented to get to the NFL. But sort of like the Bucs in the past, if it's not Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, their other receivers aren't necessarily the best route runners, and they have issues creating separation and not winning their one-on-one battles, which obviously would play into the hands of the Bucs. But you throw in T.Y. Hilton, who maybe has lost a step or two, but if he can run those routes better than the other two guys, it might be a better situation to get him in the game. And I think if you look at the Cowboys game the previous week, where they were playing to win because they still want to win the division, Dak threw it to his receiver towards the sideline. It was incomplete. Then the next time, the cornerback was right there. The throw was to the inside, but the cornerback was right there and took it to the house for pick 6. I think some of that had to do with the overall route running of the receiver on that play, because I don't believe that he was looking for CeeDee Lamb. So it's definitely something to take into account if T.Y. Hilton is going to get into this game. And obviously this game is on Monday. We're still very excited for it. That gives you the whole weekend to watch football. You could also watch some football and gamble over at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino in Tampa.
Just the way you like it.
Me and my wife decided we'll have some fun. I was playing a 2-cent machine. 6 bets in, I hit a jackpot. $117,000.
Hi, my name is Tara, and I won over $500,000 playing slot. I do this full time, and I would not change it for the world.
I'm Gloria. I won over $2 million at Seminole Hard Rock Casino. I went and bought a bunch of jewelry.
My name is Mike. I won over $350,000. I love playing baccarat because it hits different. When you pull in that card and you flip over that 9, beating that 8, can't miss.
I'm Jimmy. I won $500,000 in a slot tournament at Seminole Hard Rock in Tampa. Even a blind squirrel can get a nut sometimes.
My name is Philip, and I won $215,000 on Blazing Sevens.
Putting my last $40 on the table.
Next thing you know, bam, $215,000 jackpot.
I hit that bad boy.
I didn't realize how much it would change my life.
You only live once. Have fun with it, right?
Anybody can win at Seminole Hard Rock in Tampa.
You never know when you can win big over the Seminole Hard Rock Casino in Tampa, Florida. I was looking for the injury report. Usually someone tweets it out like when it comes out, but we got the email at 4:02, so 2 minutes into the show. I'm just checking my email now because we've been doing the Pewter Report podcast. But the injury report is out. Let's get into it. Carlton Davis, he fully participated with the shoulder injury, so obviously that's good. The Bucs is a bit lengthy, so I'm going to try to speed through it a little bit. Mike Edwards, hip, full participation. Mike Evans, illness, full participation. He'll be fine. Don't worry. Robert Hainsey, hamstring, limited participation, but good that he was out there. Julio Jones, knee, fully participated. Nick Leverett, dealing with the knee and a shoulder, was limited in participation. John Molchin, ankle, he's one of their backup offensive linemen, was limited. Sean Murphy-Bunting, shoulder, fully participated. Carl Nassib, we haven't seen him in a couple of weeks. Still recovering from that pec injury. He fully participated. Keanu Neal, hip, fully participated. Kyle Rudolph did not participate. He is dealing with a knee injury. Logan Ryan was limited with the knee injury. Donovan Smith fully participated with a foot injury. And Vita Vea, with that calf injury, as we talked about earlier, was limited in his participation. For the Cowboys, a lot smaller of a list. Their center, Tyler Biadacic, I don't know how to fully say that. He has an ankle injury. He fully participated. DeMarcus Lawrence, their defensive end, has a foot injury. He was limited. Tyron Smith, offensive tackle, who we talked about earlier, with a knee injury, is limited or was limited. And their linebacker, Leighton Vander Esch, a neck injury, he fully participated. So overall, it looks like both teams are going to be as healthy as they can possibly be, with the exception of anyone with a season-ending injury. I think a couple people to monitor: Robert Hainsey, obviously with that hamstring. Vita, I think, is going to play. I mean, he was out there today. I know he was limited, but I don't really see anybody that's going to be a game-time decision for the Bucs, and neither do I for the Cowboys either. So it's good to have both teams at full strength, you know?
Yeah, and it's something interesting is, as the season's gone along, the Bucs have had so many injuries, and perhaps we don't put enough stock into that. Like, they've been decimated in the secondary, offensive line, defensive line, and so this is the healthiest the Bucs have been. Talking about a big change since, as Byron Leftwich said yesterday, since OTAs. And for the Cowboys, they're coming back. Their offensive line's getting healthier, so it's really going to be two teams near as to 100% as you can be at this point in the season.
Yeah, I really like seeing that. You know, like it's listen. I mean, if you're a fan of the Bucs and you want the Bucs to win, obviously, I don't think you would hate if like CeeDee Lamb didn't play. But you know, if you're just watching these two teams, you want to see the best of the best. You want to see Carlton Davis against CeeDee Lamb. You want to see Trayvon Diggs against Mike Evans. You know, that makes for a much more fun, you know, matchup to go and watch. And it also makes it a lot better to bet with Underdog Fantasy when you're picking the stats for your favorite or least favorite players. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest way to get some action on the NFL. You can also do it with, oh boy, the UFC, golf, baseball season when that comes back, and the NBA and the NHL, which are going on at the moment. You can do their pick'em game and their rivals game as well. You just pick an over or under on your favorite or least favorite player stats. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. You pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your pick'em slip. Get every pick right and take home some cold, hard cash. Use the promo code Pewter and get your first deposit doubled up to $100 by Underdog. Even if you learn from Plant City Math, you know that is a heck of a deal. So once again, use the promo code Pewter, Pewter, and double your first deposit over at Underdog Fantasy. I think we got into a lot of topics about how each team changed. We talk about the injuries or the lack thereof, the injury report. So a lot of important information that we got to. This is technically our last podcast of the week because the Bucs play on Monday. But don't you worry. We'll be back on Monday, not just with the regular Pewter Report podcast. We won't have one at 4 o'clock, but that's because we'll have the Pewter Tailgate show going on a little bit later to talk everything about this matchup between the Bucs and the Cowboys. It's the Celsius Pewter Report Tailgate show presented by Age Rejuvenation, and it will be live from the walk-ons over in Midtown. So if you're going to the game and you want to get a quick to eat some drinks before you head out to Raymond James Stadium, walk-ons is a great spot to go before that game. Then we'll have the Pewter Game Day show. That will go on right as kickoff gets going at 8:15. We'll give our live insight, analysis, and reactions to everything that's going on in the Bucs' first Cowboys game. The tailgate show will start at 6 o'clock, and then the game day show starts right at kickoff at 8:15 when you're watching Monday Night Football. But should be a really exciting game. Obviously, two very captivating teams for obvious reasons. Tom Brady with the Bucs, and people either love or hate the Dallas Cowboys. So obviously brings a lot of attention to that matchup, and we're very much looking forward to covering it. One last thing as well, we would really appreciate if you guys could subscribe to our YouTube channel, Pewter Report TV, and of course our other social media at Pewter Report. We're getting very, very close to 10,000 subscribers, and we would really love to hit that goal by the end of the Bucs season, which hopefully is not at the end of Monday night. But if you could spread the word, do us a favor, just subscribe, hit that like button. It's absolutely free. Just lets you know when we go live with our podcast or various videos that we put up on YouTube. We had a couple podcast clips getting ready to go. We put one up earlier, and would absolutely love if you guys could do that for us, because we love the Pewter people, and we want as many people to know about the latest news with the Bucs and information about the Bucs as possible. But that's going to do it for us on this show. For Adam, I'm Matt saying thanks everybody for watching. We will see you on Monday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Have a great weekend. Out.